Call to order this special meeting of the Scottsdale Unified School District Governing Board. It is Friday, September 29th, 2017. The time is 9:04, and we'll start with a roll call from my far left. Kim Purdy. Kim Harden.
Allison Beckham. Sandy Kravitz.
Barbara Pillenberg. All board members are present, and we do have a quorum. If we want to stand for pledge of allegiance, please, I think there's this way. Oh, gosh,
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. So we will move to our information discussion item with possible action, a discussion on superintendent's performance goals. Dr. Birdwell, would you like to get us started? Yes.
Okay, I won't have a copy of track in the center. So you've each been provided a packet of information, and trying to cascade, my goal was to cascade in alignment to the work of the governing board. We had the work that we did in March, and then again the revision that we did in September of organizational clarity. So that's what you did with that in March. So the performance goals are actually aligned to thematic goal setting because it's something we do yearly. Performance goals are a yearly objective that is measured. You know that under the statute it requires that pay for performance be part of the superintendent's contract and be part of the process. So what I did was we've been working as a cabinet aligning that clarity from the governing board. We've gone out, we've talked to the schools. So what I did was put this in a format that gets you familiar with, because as the continuous improvement plans come forward from the schools, they will be in this exact same format. So when we look at when we look at these performance goals, they are aligned to the defining objectives. So the first section is on getting the right leaders. And we had discussed last March about what does that mean. It means not just hiring people, but it's about training, developing, supporting. We talked about developing communication processes through with leadership, creating levels of instructional leadership. So what these goals do is it breaks it down for you and puts the functional actions in that are occurring. And again, this is the yearly piece. Each one is broken down. In the back for your convenience, not that you hadn't already seen them, are the long-range, more strategic goal settings. That's where our metrics come in. And so remember that last year, under my contract, it was the development of metrics. We're getting some of that baseline data for the first time, so this is going to be a changing document as we look at the data and set the cut standards, and then I work on this, we'll bring it forward to you. But the focus of today is really the first portion. And I didn't want you to think that we're skipping metrics. Metrics are there, they're more of a long-range process. But when we look at performance side, what is it really critical that we need to get done this year? And so I broke it down into those 5 buckets that we had discussed. The pieces that I recommended is a starting point of discussion. I'm not locked into them. I don't feel that they have to be. I wanted to give you my reflection. So what I did in the front memo was give you a bit of a reflection. I think it's really important for us to be able to know that the executive leadership has a self-reflection in mid-year and a final, that we're evaluating that leadership, because it's the leadership that then is directing the rest of the schools. So we want to make sure that they're having that evaluation process. We've also put an evaluation tool in for this year that evaluates instructional leadership for the principals. And so we're training them in the McGraw training. As you got into the document, you see that they have 6 meetings of training along with coaching, and then they have an evaluation tool that then gives them the feedback on instructional leadership. I think that that's an important document for us to be looking at as we go forward. The data-driven culture is a correlate of that McGraw training as well. So when you're going to create purposeful community, there is a base, a foundation, and a framework that's about a data-driven culture. And that really is also an an alignment that we've had to say, if we're going to raise academic rigor, you have to be able to look at the data and be able to look at what does it tell us. So benchmark assessments being aligned and then timely and usable by our teachers. We began a new benchmark assessment last year. There was somewhat of a disconnect in that alignment. This year we're assured that the alignment is there, but we're also adjusting the curriculum as we go forward. So we're raising the curriculum, we've got to adjust the benchmarks and make sure that that's done and then timely back to teachers for reteaching. I also put in here that the employee handbook is critically important for us because that supports teachers. So when we look at that correlate, that although it's a data-driven culture in instructional support, it's also really critical to understand that part of that is the employee piece of that. And by creating a handbook, it outlines the structures that allow for professional learning communities to exist. It allows for training to occur. It allows for the workday to provide that tutoring and focused tutoring for students who need support. So the employee handbook does tie back to what we do instructionally in-house. So I feel like that needed to be in that particular area because it's about supporting teachers. And then we get into the physical piece. I don't think there's anything more critical than our alignment to the classroom, and that starts with teachers' pay. We made a commitment that over a 4-year period we would raise pay by 10%. And we should continue that focus. And I want to continue working hard in finance to try to create the movement. We've moved halfway there. We've got another halfway to go. We have some work to do in that area. Again, that supports teachers, but it's very specifically tied to finance. The academic alignment, and we talked about redesigning buildings, but also building programs. And we have 2 initial programs that are in the process right now that are important for us now to be focused on. We're shifting Pima to a traditional school, so there's a strategic process to that. We also have the development of the middle IB program the board approved last spring, that's really important for us to do. And then we have a new science and learning lab in Cheyenne. And when I look at that, that's an opportunity for us to enhance learning and enhance what we're doing in the aspect of education in the middle level. So we've been exploring and will continue to explore what we have in-house in the sciences, in addition to what we can bring in to bring us into the next century of the sciences. We will have an opportunity to roll that into Cheyenne as we design this new building, and then take that model and roll it out to all the middle schools, having an impact on sciences and education across the district. So that's a big focus that we have to keep an eye on. So I'm trying to pick the ones that I thought, we don't want to lose focus of these. All of these are important, but these are the ones I felt like we shouldn't lose. In the last correlate, the last objective, defining objective, was to create above levels of communication. There's no doubt that communication has been our focus. So the first thing is to create the communication network and then assess its productivity. We've had our first meeting, but how will we assess that? And we assess it through information that we gather, the summary, and in the end, the feedback from the people who participated. Each site is cascaded down, that at each site there's been a communication network put in place. When I meet with them, it's the principal and 2 representatives from the communication network. We hit the hot topics that are going on, we do the myth busting, and what issues are burning at the campus. We're able to keep those agendas rolling and spiral information back and make corrections. So we've got that up and running, and then we're putting in a district level one as well. Teacher laptop usage. 18 months ago, visiting classrooms, talking to teachers, greatest frustration was, I only use it to take attendance because it doesn't function. Can't really access curriculum material. That was a critical shift for us, and we were fortunate enough to have the voters support the capital override so we could get equipment. We've already seen a drastic increase in the use of teachers accessing the network. What we want to do now is monitor that and ensure that they're able to access everything they need from a curricular teaching support standpoint. So again, it's a teacher support issue that we're looking at in here. And although it falls under the ability to communicate, it's also the ability to teach. So there is a crossover there. And then the last one is is a parent engagement piece. When we looked at community partners, what I did was boil that back to, we've kind of left the first realm out. We started talking about outside. We're going to continue to build those. But the first partner needs to be embraced. And then we talked to the principals about, are parents truly the partner in education that they should be? It starts with an academic ability and conversation. So yeah, we come to the curriculum nights, we see the teacher nights, those are fine, and we'll record those, but it gets deeper than that. How have we given parents the opportunity to go online, to be able to assess how my student's doing, to look at my student's information, to see, are all my students' assignments in? How do I support the school? By supporting the enforcement of my students sitting down and getting that work done. And when the conversation with parents is, yeah, I started that and then I saw that the grades were never updated. So it creates a system shift in-house in order to create that partnership. So we need to not only make sure they have access, but they're accessing information that means something. So that requires that each of the schools take this goal and cascade it down to providing communication to parents of, you can guarantee that on Thursday nights, we're going to update our grades. You can count on Friday when you log in, being able to have that conversation with your child, support the education. So we've got to build that. That doesn't exist, by the way. Parents are very frustrated with the access to how my child is doing. And so they get that grade, and all of a sudden they're like, well, why didn't you tell me before now that my child was struggling? So we have the technology to do it. It's having folks get that done. Also, we wanted to make sure that every parent understood who's my teacher, what's their educational background, a picture to identify them early on. So we've created a website. We found some errors in that already. Dr. McCauley and I sat, we were scanning through it yesterday, and we have about 6 schools that still aren't uploading properly. So we have to fix those. But the bottom line is we want a website where a parent can log on and say, third grade teacher, oh, I got assigned to Mrs. Smith. This is Mrs. Oh, my goodness, Mrs. Smith has a bachelor's degree from here and a master's degree, and she's been teaching for 8 years. Build that relationship right up front and start that through an electronic process before I ever meet the teacher. So we're getting that fixed for the district. So that's a goal to continue on and make sure that happens. And then there are 2 other correlates that you measure. I was talking to a principal yesterday, so I'll use it as an example. But when over 18% of the students missed more than 18 school days, and there was another percentile, 5% of the students who missed 30 school days. And then you look at the academic achievement of the school, it's hard for the teachers to get the job done if the child didn't show up to begin with. And so there's a concerted effort to say attendance is critically important, and attendance is a partnership with a parent. So how do we develop that partnership so that the teacher can say, I can teach your child, but first bring your child. And then once we have them in the classroom, I can fill those gaps by the time that I spend through direct tutoring and intervention with them. And then the other piece is tardies. We have an extreme problem with tardies in our district. So class has begun, I'm 15 minutes late, I've missed 15 minutes of instruction. So there needs to be a concerted effort to have the parents, 1, we want to get you timely grades, 2, we need your students in school, 3, we need them on time, and that partnership is the first level of partnership with parents. And that is missing here, and we want to make sure that we get that done this year. So that's why I chose the ones I chose. 1, teachers are the #1 priority for me, making sure that the teachers have the support, they have the equipment, they have the tools to get it done, that we've created a data culture, and that we're partnering with our parents as we go forward. So that's why, just to give you the mindset of why I chose the ones that I chose, and then I'm just open for discussion with the board to say, all of this is going to get done. But I know that you're tasked with measuring on certain things that we don't want to let fall through the gaps, and these are the ones that I think cannot fall through the gaps if we're going to move forward in raising our academic rigor. Now, I'm open for just a conversation with y'all. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of my mindset.
All right, well, and I'm going to add, after all that, really today our focus is the filter that we are taking all of this work, which is amazing. And you can see all of our discussions and all the measurables and things of the last 6 months down on paper. I thought it was pretty exciting. So we're filtering all of this through the question of Dr. Bridwell's performance goals, which in June, this board will take a look at and look at the measurables and determine if she has earned her 5% performance pay, 5% of her annual base salary, and in June, this board will determine if that's appropriate. So that is that's what we're filtering these through, and I
And I wanted to give you, I gave you this as well, which is the part of the contract that talks about performance, and also, just to your point, President Freeberg, in mid-year in December, we do a check-in.
Correct.
How are we doing on these? So it's not just a one-time event as well, just, so that we talk now, October.
It was, excuse me, Sandy's looking for it. It was on
It was in the email.
Sorry, I looked at this one.
So it was, it's a matter of October, we said that we want to make sure we're all on the same page, we have that laser-like focus. Mid-December, though, I come back and say, hey, here's what the first benchmarks have said, here's what we're seeing, here's where we are in these processes. We touch base and have a conversation, and then in June, you do your finals, as President Berlin said. I don't want you to think that we only talk about them once. That's my point, is we talk about it 3 times, and by the way, the cabinet review was based off of this process as well. So they get 3 touches too. They meet with me, we do a mid-year, and we do a final, just like you would do with me.
Let's get us started.
Well, I have just kind of a housekeeping question. I did not receive this as an email, but I got review 2 pages. So did I miss something?
Did you get an email?
I got D's and
I got
this. So I got D's.
There were 2 different emails.
It went under governing board email.
Well, I missed it. So this was sent?
Yes.
I have to apologize. I never allowed this one.
And
I
sure
said
that,
there.
I did too.
So that, like you said, that's not in there.
There was 2, yeah, I'm sure I just.
Because I know you, in your
Unless
email,
they
you said you're sending 2 separate things.
Right.
I kept looking for the second step.
It
came a little later.
Oh, so maybe I was on.
I don't know, like 30 minutes, whatever.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh.
It wasn't one.
I apologize for not,
Make sure it wasn't,
go through this, and I want to thank you, because all my questions, looks like they were, the initial ones I had were answered right there. Because this, I was like, okay, I don't know what this means. That explains what you were talking about, that was great.
And I think this will serve you well in, when you get the school improvement plans, the continuous improvement plans from the principal, you'll be used to a format, because this is the format they use. And I think it's gonna help you in, readability of seeing what schools are doing as well. So I think you'll, I was home sick and thought I should put it in the format the principals have, just to create clarity. It's good to be sick.
I do have one more housekeeping question.
Okay.
So have we seen this McRail evaluation tool yet?
You have not seen it yet.
Okay, so that's something I would like to review too.
Yes.
Well, I remember,
No, they haven't seen it yet.
I know there's somebody from McCrell.
Yeah, they're in the training, they've had 2, they had December training, and they've had, 2 trainings already this fall, so, and they love it. I mean, it's bringing such clarity to the role of the instructional leader, and how to create purposeful communities, how to lead change, how to lead data conversation. So they're getting all of this, and then what we're saying is, look, your evaluation ought to reflect the work you're doing. So a tool that actually gives them a good reflective practice.
Yeah, it sounds great. That was something I had written down, so I would love to just kind of just review it, just get an overview of it. It would be great.
I'm going to share the timeline of that.
Yeah, what's the timeline?
The principals will be trained November 17th and 18th on this instrument, and we'll roll it out this year for the principals, while the APs will still use the older, the version that we have currently. Then, and principals will finish their training of all of the McCrell-Bouts leadership by the end of the school year 18. The APs will begin their training on March and have the exact same McCrell training that the principals have. Actually, we started a little bit yesterday at our AP meeting. So then they'll be prepared to get on board with the McCrell evaluation for the 18-19 school year. So,
Board Member Kirby, so question on the process for that tool. Is the principal will be trained, you said, in November?
yes.
But they already have their goals for the school year, right?
Yeah, they're all in.
So they're all, for example, no more than 10% fall on it, highly, that kind of stuff. So these 2, it's not like they will get their goals in September, November. They already have their goals. They just marries up in November.
Yeah, this is the functionality of the principalship and instructional leadership. This is actually the results and the work that goes on as a continuous improvement, but they marry beautifully together.
Questions, comments?
So, yeah, this is light years from where we've been, as well as really a best, I think headed in direction of best practice, and I think it actually is there. So it's amazing. It really is. This isn't easily done. And I'm also hearing that this cascades to the next level, so it's very similar. So the direct reports as well as site leaders, and then I would think does it cascade then beyond to their direct reports, being educators and.
Okay. Yeah, and I thank you, Ms. Hubbard, for that, because that is really as we moved us forward in looking at defining objectives that are annual versus long-term, we want that cascading effect through the whole organization. And that's why you see responsible parties, you see more than just my name. Yeah. Because it does engage the next levels all the way through, because I don't go in and write curriculum, but Cheryl Redmond does. Yeah. And you begin to see that cascade all the way through, and then the people who work under her have these same pieces, so all of this gets layered up.
Yeah. And the goals are there, and then they interpret it and how it applies to them and to the team.
And the implementation, and it allows us to touch base, and we touch base on most of these every other week with the executive leadership group, which is executive directors and directors, and then I don't think there's a week that passes that cabinet isn't touching base on one of these.
So, I do have a couple kind of just comments, considerations, but it really is, it's outstanding. And in what's been accomplished in this period of time, I think it's also amazing. I know at the beginning when we were creating the contract, the community really wanted metric, and there's a lot of us who are very metric-oriented, but just from my professional experience, I realized creating metrics was actually an accomplishment. And then, the community discounts, it's a huge effort, and I do know from an implementation standpoint, there's literally six steps in it: identify, articulate, communicate, monitor, measure, reward. So to do all 6 steps takes time, and the words you're using and how we're exactly moving in that direction. So this is really, and I can also share that from a professional standpoint, not many organizations actually achieve this. It's much easier said than done. Mm-hmm. So I just think it's tremendous. So thank you. And I'm hoping that you're getting the same feedback from your direct reports, because, this is good. Clarity is good, It's not a hammer, it's a flashlight, and it gets alignment in where we want to move, and that's why it's important. It's not meant to catch somebody on something. It's meant to, how do we all move together faster, farther, right? So anyways, I'm just, sharing my exuberance for this. It's not easy. Seriously, it's not easy.
What's interesting, Ms. Hartman, just to do a little reflection on that, is that I was talking to Dr. Nance yesterday about, we talked about pieces of this. I've met with different cabinet members about their pieces and what they're working on, to synthesize this into a document that we're all now, here's a document that guides us, creates the clarity for myself. I know Anna and I talked to Jill, and she said, man, I can't believe that you were able to synthesize all of us together, because I have, the 5 different pieces all moving at once, 6 pieces, but the reality is, it does create this immense amount of clarity that allows us to really keep the laser focus on the things that really matter the most. And I love the work that we did as a starts right here.
You can't do this without this, actually.
And so I know someday you're doing self-reflection, but I don't know boards who are able to do this as clear as you all were in a matter of, I think we did 3 workshops total, but in 3 workshops, that's all. And I know it's 1-page document, but it was a tremendous amount of clarity that we were able to take and say, and the cabinet to take that, embrace it, and then really be specific about how to implement what the vision is. So we appreciate that too. It started with this, so thank you for the work that you did.
And by the way, it takes much more to do this, to do less, right? To get it down to a page, to synthesize it. One of my favorite quotes is Ben Franklin, which is, If I had more time, I'd write a shorter letter.
Very
true. It's difficult to get to that. So here's my consideration, or just kind of question/consideration for you. So I love this. This is great. And it kind of has the framework of a logic model. I don't know if you use logic, if you actually call it logic model, right? So you've got your inputs here, which are essentially your resources and budget. You've got your approaches here, which are actually your activities. You've got your outputs here, which are your performance, your indicators. The next step is quantifying it. And you can't do it in every case, and I also recognize some are long-term and some are short-term. So sometimes you can only measure milestones to get to the bigger. And we get a little more quantifiable in the, in this detail. But just to give you one example, for example, when we were talking about teacher compensation, because when I was flipping through it, I recognize some of these are difficult, but that is being able to quantify it is actually a very positive thing. So one example that you shared was teacher compensation. And I had written it in my notes where we actually had identified 10% in 4 years. That's very quantifiable. And even though it takes 4 years, you can measure, okay, we're 5.5% of this 10%. So where there's opportunities, and I don't know if it's at every level or if it's on a handful of them, so proxies within each of the segments, or if you want to do it at the yellow level, kind of the anchor or whatever we call that, the focus area level. To the extent we can, and I know you can't in all of them, but where we can, it'd be great. And we are actually in some by identifying a date. So that's my only comment. And I could get really specific, but I just think this is such an outstanding piece of work, and that's the direction.
And I could not agree more. Where there is quantifiable, there will be quantifiable data brought back to you.
Okay.
And then some of it's actual completion, like employee handbook, you'll see a handbook.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes it's a deliverable, sometimes it's a date, sometimes it's something that is quantifiable, like the compensation. Okay.
If I can just jump in and clarify something for me, because I tied, or in my head at least, tied these goals to the metrics that we have reviewed as well, included in here, kind of with the vision that a lot of our metrics will fit nicely into specific goals.
Some of them will.
Is that, the idea is kind of merging these two things together.
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Bergman. I had thought about when we merge it, but I thought it might complicate the short-term versus long-term.
Yeah.
So in trying to stay in that logic model, I'll try to keep them separate. But there's overlap. When we look at attendance data, it's in both places, because we should monitor that. It's going to be a long-term goal to look at that attendance over time. But we're going to look at it this year, too, and we're looking at what are we doing to combat the poor attendance in some places. What's the communication that's occurring there, and how do we quantify it? Well, the quantify is the end result of attendance, but there's a lot of steps to get there.
Yeah.
It's the communication meetings, it's the meetings with parents, it's the phone calls, it's the conferencing. And then what you look at, the end result is, do I have better attendance or not? And with that said, if the attendance improves, then we look at the quantifiable data back in here about student academic achievement and say, did that achievement come up when the attendance came up? Research tells us it will. We want to measure it and make sure that it does. If it didn't, then we have to go back to those curriculum instructional pieces to say, was there something wrong with the curriculum alignment of what was being taught? So we want to measure it. So yes, you go back and forth between the metrics and the goals, because the metrics are the ultimate outcome of some of these steps. So you might have something that's measured with a deliverable, but it does affect our metrics.
Yeah. So to the point, we're getting in like the advanced graduate level of this stuff. So I acknowledge that. But if you carry that logic model further, which there may be something interesting about that to think about it, but using that very specific example about attendance, right? So there's an input, which is some type of activity at the teacher and the parent level. There's that's the activity of whatever, that is happening to encourage that behavior. There's the output, which you actually see the results. But then there's that kind of, so you measure that, but the long-term outcome is improved academic achievement. So you know what I mean? It's just stitching this all together. But it makes all the sense.
So what I would envision is that what we would do is we would take a quarter of, like in the school, I gave an example, and what the first one I talked about is, we'll take these students where we have the attendance issues. What are the steps we're going to do to try to affect parent behavior to affect student attendance? Once we get that, what we'll look for is individual student growth. Are these students academically growing better now that they're in school than they were when they were out of school? And we'll look at those individual growth. So you may not, you won't, from a first perspective, see the individual students, but what you'll see is, here's a percentage of students who have poor attendance, percentile. These students now have a better attendance rate. Here's the academic outcome of these students now that their attendance is good. And that's really important to then celebrate with the student and the parent. So it does that full circle that we've talked about.
So I just have 3 more questions.
Because I love it so much, and it's so good.
In the communication area, I'm a big fan, we've talked all about it, of kind of benchmarking where we're at. So have we made any progress on that to kind of get kind of like a check-in, whether it's employee engagement or anything like that, and how might that fit into here?
I'm not sure I understand in what portion of the communication, because the communication will have many layers on it, but we've got a communication committee that's working on a communication plan. We're 80% completion on the website piece. We're just starting the communication with the parents on attendance and issues there. But as far as employee, the networks are all in place. Every school has established a network. We had our first meeting. We're now creating an actual form to help them in their conversation. And so I'm not sure there's so much communication going on. We are all over communication.
Yeah. And I'm looking at it, we've got 1, 2, 3, and I saw all of those, which is the network. And I mean, first you got to put the system in place, right? I get this. I get it. Increased voice, clarity, and communication, all those things are great. There was just a follow-up point at a prior meeting when we were going to evaluate if there is some reasonable outside tool to help measure. Because quite frankly, these are inputs. These aren't measuring outputs. And so I'm just tying it to a previous conversation that we said we were going to look.
The answer to that would be I have not, and Michael and I haven't met following because Michael had some ideas on that.
Okay.
Michael Lorsch.
Okay. The sooner you baseline it, the better. And I'm really interested in whether parents or however that looks. So I'm interested in that just as a follow-up point when that's appropriate.
Can I just add to that? So Sandy and I have been to the first 2 communication meetings, and Aaron Helm is in charge of it, and I noticed Aaron's name on this under communications, which was great. So what we did is we first brainstormed, put ideas down, what do we need, where are we going, and, it started with, we need this, we need that, and ideas, really, right? But what we recognized is there was no framework. There's no strategic plan. So when we got back together, we voted that the first thing that we need to do is to put together that strategic plan. So, and there's no reason to reinvent the wheel, right? So we have gone out we kind of said, okay, there's other school districts, and then there's municipalities that kind of mirror what a district is, because it's not like a private company. So we are getting their strategic plans, if they have them, and then we are reviewing them as a committee and, starting from kind of that framework to look at building the SUSD.
And there are some measurements, like we can see, or Erin can see, how many people are clicking, as you know, on certain things, whether it's an internal communication or that, within our employees and also external parents are clicking.
So we'll identify those as much as we can, but it's so good to hear that also Michael Lorsch will be able to add that. And this is just a framework, because then it will be, of course, talked about, because we will need greater input.
We have parents, we
I got one teacher that signed up, but we do have a teacher on the committee. And, then obviously Erin and Nancy's expertise in communication. So it's a starting point.
And thank you for doing that, that's great. It's actually really great that you're doing this, I do appreciate that. One thing to think about, you guys can bring it to the committee, something that's really interesting in the community is the best place to work survey. Municipalities, businesses, so it's private, public, and nonprofit, actually all use this tool. What I would go to is those that are outstanding, that are getting the high results, and see if they have any communication models that might be interesting. But it's a nationally recognized tool at this point, and so, I don't know, maybe something to learn from that.
So we had our first, in the communication lines, to stay on topic, attorney.
It is a line item.
It's the line item. So communication, we had our first open parent forums as well. It's always fascinating to see the various cultures and climates we use in schools. Monday is one with Chaparral on Monday. And I have to tell you, what an amazing conversation with parents about academic achievement and focus on learning in post-secondary. But it really was a pre-K 20 conversation that broke down into grade school. Great conversation. And each community is slightly different. We're doing that in a very open process. I know that in the past, and the concept was write a question down with cabinet filter and give you the questions that you're going to answer. And if somebody suggested that interest, I said, no, I never want to do that. I always want the community to ask me any question they want to ask. So we did our first 4. Unfortunately, there's a lot of because of conflicts, but we'll get the good one in. Those seem to be going quite well and relatively well attended. Coronado, the least attendance, which we kind of knew given the work schedule, but we have the night meeting coming up. But good dialogue, and we're hearing good information, and it gives us information to take away and check on and follow up on. And that's where we're hearing them, hey, I'd love to use that parent portal, but the grades aren't there. They're not there timely. So that feedback from parents, we're able to go back and then trade. And so out of those conversations came some of these goals.
Great.
Yeah, from listening to parents.
Heather? I do. I've got one I'm just going to take offline because I think I might veer off the agenda. But I'll risk it and you can tell me. Got one more in addition to that. You had given us the long-range strategic planning metrics, and I just couldn't recall. We have the 4, 3, 2, 1, kind of good, better, best kind of thing. We actually tie that to like a 4's worth 100%, 3's worth 75%, 2's worth 50%. Well, whatever that declining scale looks like. Do we take
We have
that
the metrics on the very back of the academic side of the metrics, but some of the things on there are not necessarily academic metrics. They're but what the rubric concept is kind of to say, is that there's a 4-point scale if you look at it in quartiles. So the 4-point scale, as we finish the metrics and have the baseline, and we look at the percentiles inside of there, what we're really saying is on a Likert scale, a 4-point Likert scale, where are we? So what we'll be doing is we'll actually be putting where we're at, and we'll be saying, okay, Stephanie, well, given the data that we have, information we have, here's where we're at. We're number 2. Our goal is to reach a 4.
Yes.
And then when we highlight those, and those boxes are highlighted, and we'll put an explainer about the Likert scale, that's really a public document that we want to make available to the public because it's one that is easier to understand than to take the back metrics, and bless Anna's heart here. But those back metrics, a lot of people would not necessarily understand. But a Likert scale, a 1 to 4 Likert scale, people get, and then inside the box is the explanation of what that defines.
I got it. You know what, I'm actually thinking even a step further than that, and so this is where it may veer off. I know we've talked about it before. If this ultimately could be turned into kind of some type of bonus structure. Exactly, and that's where then that percentage actually makes sense, or that Likert scale. So I know I've mentioned that in the past too. I don't know where we're at on that, but I know you could turn this into some type of, development structure. If you achieved a 4, a 3.5 and a 4, it's 100% of some type of pool. If you get between a 2.5 and a 3.5, it's a certain percentage of a pool. So that's, I think I was thinking percentage-wise from that, but because you would take the liker and then apply it to some kind of pool. We'll think of varying off.
Yeah, as we go forward. Yeah. But getting the right leader. Gotcha.
It's a very big conversation.
It's a forward-thinking piece that, and again, I'm gonna go back to this, is that, reliability and validity of data is so critically important. When you start tying it to performance consultation, you wanna make sure you're valid in what you're doing, and then the reliability in that. So we'll keep that in mind. Right now, it was actually modeled off of the Chandler, model, and, it was a school out of Oregon or Washington that we looked at, a year ago. As we began down this pathway to say college career readiness, indexing, et cetera. And so I think from a long-term perspective, it's good to have that dialogue and not lose it. We're still, remember, creating what we said we would value. Some of those didn't exist. And matter of fact, I was wrong in my summary sheet, and I'll correct you that we are giving the PSAT this year. I put it on as next year's starter, but the Inspires and then the PSAT and the ACT. So then that creates this baseline for us going forward that are national tests. And so remember that some of that is based on us getting there.
Yeah.
And so when we get there, then you say, okay, now is this a good valid instrument for performance testing?
Okay. Yeah, I apologize. It's just, I'm suffering for if you give a mouse a cookies. I'm in the right direction. It's really great. My last comment is, there's still, and maybe it's just because where we're at in the continuum, but there's a gap in communication. I am shocked by the emails that I'm still getting from educators, community members, but really educators, community members, unless there's, those who are here, which is wonderful, so they get the firsthand information. They still think, we're all AZ merit, we are AZ merit. This is the most comprehensive, balanced set of metrics I've ever seen in any education setting. And so I just think there's some kind of communication gap that still exists. And maybe it's just because we're just rolling it out, but what are your thoughts around that, and how do we begin to close that gap?
Thank you for asking it. Here's my 2 cents on that, and Dr. McCauley, I'm going to offer that you can jump in because you've had a lot of the data conversations. But as you create a data culture, it takes a while for people to totally understand and embrace the data and what it means to them. So as we're meeting with schools and teaching schools about the data and really the layers of the data, because it starts with that teacher's formative, and then it has the benchmark, and then it has state summative, but then it has the national test. And as the schools begin to embrace data, the dialogue will shift. And so we're really in the process of creating the data cultures with the right dialogue. So the professional learning communities are based on data now. The principals are being trained in data, versed in POCs, how to lead the conversation, create the data rooms. We still have schools that haven't created data rooms, and this is a new concept for them. As that begins, a year or two in that, the dialogue shifts. When the dialogue shifts with the teacher in the classroom, the dialogue shifts with the parent. But until the teacher in the classroom embraces and understands data, the parent gets the opinion in the sense of the teacher. So some teachers are heavy into data informative assessments, and you see that pop all over the place. Others are still a little standoffish of it, so that we're in the midst of that shift of that culture and building it. I think that we'll see that reflection, quite honestly, in our school forward. Barb and I won't talk about them specifically. I will say, where there were cultures who said data wasn't important and testing isn't important, you see decline. And unfortunately, the community only sees the label. They don't understand the cultural habit. So we've got to fix the cultural piece to embrace that data is to inform me, the teacher, about learning. And when I'm informed about learning, I can raise expectations and rigor. And that's all part of this too, is that academic rigor being raised. So it's a bigger conversation, and you've actually done the conversations, and I know Ms. Kirby sat in on one with you, in our targeted Tunnelina piece.
Yeah, so 90% of data for elementary is AZ merit data, so we're trying to get that there. At the high school, I think it's between 70 and 80%, but even with the college and career readiness index, easy merit is a component in there, so that's taking up some of that percentage. And the other thing is that until we're testing 100% of the students on a college-down entrance exam, it's really hard to go out and say, oh, so, 92% of our students are meeting the college readiness benchmark, when only 45% actually took the test. And so this year we'll actually have every junior, so we'll be able to get out and start publicizing that. We're working, I've got the data team working on, we need to get AP statistics on our website as well. Put in those data points, ACT, SAT, we've got them into School City, our assessment system, so that people can actually, for the first time, actually see SAT and ACT scores. We've pushed it into Synergy as well, so actually we've got almost everything in the Synergy. They're working on that so that teachers can actually see it right in their grade book. When they open their grade book, they can see how students are performing. But again, until we have 100% where we can actually say with validity, this is the percent of our students meeting college readiness benchmarks, it's harder to really get that communication out without it being muddied by the fact that only 45% are really taking it.
I want to supplement both of those answers. I've been out visiting with principals, touring schools. I've probably hit 12 so far, and it's fascinating that every principal is moving at the appropriate pace for their school and the teachers in their school with respect to the data culture. Some principals, the newer principals, are coming in with experience in this culture, and so for them, they can just hit the ground running. Other principals have never had this experience, and so they're trying to learn it themselves, and so then their school may not be as far along. But every principal that I talk to is having, most every principal I've talked to has had conversations about data, and some have data rooms up, some have data rooms in progress going up. But what I love is that Dr. Burwell and the team, they've given each principal the autonomy to build their data room as it best fits their culture. So not all data rooms are identical. They're all a little different. That it meets, that the principals are putting in their spin of what they want to work on with their teachers. It's exciting. I guess what I'm most excited about is, yes, we are all moving this direction, but the autonomy has been given to the principals to do what they need to do on their campus. That's what's most exciting to me.
Right. And I did neglect to mention too, the other thing that AV Merit is tied to and why it is a focus is the performance or the results-based funding. And so that's huge for some of our schools that qualify. All of our schools will qualify, so that's a big thing. And just so you know, this week alone, 2 schools brought me out to actually work with their staff on data. And yesterday, the first group of teachers at Desert Canyon Middle School, the gifted teachers, they're the first group to ask me what the STEM, the standard error of the measure, was, and how it could actually be used to help them improve their AP Merit scores. And together, we all had the epiphany of, hey, this is the perfect way to use this. And they're ready to run with it now.
Yeah. And so that's that learning at a different level. And you want, and to reiterate something that Ms. Kirby said, is you kind of want to go at their own pace. You can't expect everybody to arrive at the same time. You've got to grow the culture. And that's why we talk about the data-driven culture being a core piece of instructional leadership. But you got to let people grow with them. If you push too fast, so it's a move, let up some pressure. Move, let up some pressure, because the reality is it's a lot to learn for teachers if you've not been in a data-driven culture. It's a paradigm shift.
And our principals, and I just want to highlight, and I'm going to privacy, but I want to highlight the fact that
Board Member Kirby is absolutely correct. Without us shifting our culture of site-driven leadership, where your principals are your academic leaders this couldn't be possible. This data culture, this look, we saw that, that's what we saw in the past. It wasn't possible, it wasn't being done, and so I just think we can't highlight enough or underscore enough that, yes, different schools, different communities, different groups of teachers, and different principals are all in different areas in this culture, and that is why we're seeing the disconnect in the communication, I think. But the more clarity that's coming down and the more clarity our principals get, I'm very excited to getting there too, because, yeah, it's leadership at our sites that we haven't seen in a long time, and it's what's critical to move the needle on these goals.
And that's your goal, I think, to bring that to why this discussion needs to occur, that the two goals that will intertwine is the right leader, creating these levels of instructional leadership. Then it becomes that communication, and they begin to intertwine with each other. So as one develops and grows, the communication shifts. So we'll be able to measure both those. And so I think that, again, I just have to go back to the excitement of the clarity of this document really drives that progress for the future.
I just kind of wanted to state the obvious, maybe in a less sophisticated way than I do. When people hear data-driven culture, I think a lot of people, the hairs on their neck go up, and they think test, and we're not talking about teaching to a test. We are talking about using data to help inform instruction, I think, as you said. It's not about, teaching to question A, B, or C on a test. And I think parents in their gut knew something wasn't being covered in class, or that their students didn't understand something, and teachers were plowing right through onto the next subject or topic without actually going back and reviewing what their students were looking at, or what their students were learning or not learning in the classroom. So my feeling has always been, that we have good teaching going on in the classroom, but testing is secondary. Such as AZ merits, those types of tests. I would hope that the benchmark testing is being implemented to inform what's going on in the classroom. And if we have good teaching going on and effective teaching, then my belief is we have to worry less about these national tests.
Yeah, well said. If the foundation instruction is occurring and your curriculum is aligned where it should be, you have less worry about the end result, what we call the autonomy of I'll talk to you at the end, the summative assessment, the state assessment, because you've done everything, and it takes care of itself when you've done good instruction and you've used data. And again, just to reiterate again what you said, data to inform learning, which informs instruction. And I think Dr. Shimoka Chaparral explained this to the parents. The top scoring high school in the state is Catalina Foothills. We're fortunate enough that the principal has chosen to come to Chaparral, where we desperately need her guidance. But I had her take a moment and share with the staff, with the parents, how she arrived where she was as the top. And one of the things that she talked about was that culture and using the data to shift instruction, but also being able to inform instruction is to say, if I can identify it early, I can reteach, and sometimes just retest students and allow retesting. The retesting isn't a bad thing, but working towards mastering, and in doing that, I get to reteach, I get to reassess, see how many more students I picked up, and then I can teach it again in a different methodology, pick more students up, and target that intervention. So I didn't say it as eloquent as she did. It was she was trying to take her course. She truly was able to show a pathway to how you create the very best learning environment for students.
Well, and I just got to add this because it blew me away. The concept of taking that data culture that is it's positive. It's looking at just here's what we know and what we don't know, and that's all right. But in taking that even further to the students, where whenever you hear people say, well, the test, AZ merit kids don't take it seriously because it's not very great. The benchmarks aren't taken seriously because it's great. she's talking about extending that data culture to students where it doesn't matter. They're sitting down at a desk and taking a test, they're gonna do their best. It shouldn't matter to them, does it count for a grade, does it? That they understand this is all important because it's assessing what I know as a student. And she did that so well. I wish our whole district could.
Yeah, so the cascading of goals, I think what you'll see come out from this down into the principal's goals, and you will see things like what Ms. Berger just spoke about, which is the student data culture. You'll begin to see in the culture development in the school portion of this process, because it is saying that no matter what's in front of me, I give it my best, no matter what I'm doing, whether I'm in the football game, or I'm in the marching band, or I'm taking a test in class. That a student culture should be that of, I always give my best. So, but it is a shift, and she recognizes that it is a cultural shift to say data matters. And it informs us, a student, I need you to give me your best today, so that as a teacher, I can give you my best. And then as a result, by the way, we get to share with the community how well we're doing.
Can I share one thing that happened with the teachers yesterday that is so aligned to all of what Dr. Schmokel's been talking about? One of the resources that Casey and I were able to direct them to is something called major content. And this was all designed as a race to the top, and where major content was identified in the academic areas that lead to college and career readiness. And so we pulled up one of the documents, and the science teacher, this was a cross-curricular group, said, oh my gosh, had I known this document existed, and this is major focus content to prepare kids for college and career, I would have done more of that, and that. And another teacher in the room who taught, let's say, music, said, I could have too. And so it was really
There's a prime example of how it informs. It's exciting when we're having
I know.
But if I'm saying that when that dialogue occurs, it then bubbles out to the parents as well.
Yeah, it's such great dialogue.
And just to underscore that, I mean, this is just amazing work, and it really, from a systems behavior perspective, cultural change is the hardest but the most important if you want sustainable change, right? Because there's events, patterns, and structure. And structure drives behavior. Culture is the biggest structural move there is in any organization. So all these things really are just incredibly tremendous. And just one other quick point is I was looking at my notebook, my treasure chest here. I actually came across the superintendent's mid-year review from last year, and this is just light years.
I did my move. How about we move to thank you?
Well, it is what we had at that point in time.
It was.
To show what's been accomplished in 9 months, March and June, and then here. Amazing. I mean, it's not even the same conversation we're having. So this is dramatically different. So.
We have to remind ourselves that in 18 months we've had
Yeah. Well, I think that's it. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Board member Beck.
Okay, a couple things. I want to share my enthusiasm also, because I didn't see this, and I did have the mid-year report, and I had the metrics from this, and so all my questions were, oh my gosh, how are we going to get to something like this today? Because we had not making this, 4-hour marathon. So excited to see this. I did have some of these metrics, and I did have a couple of questions. I do not have the professional background that Board Member Hartman does. So my 2 questions are, I did not understand at all the 4-3-2-1. So that 4-point scale was the Likert scale? Likert? Or it could also be a rubric. I mean, either one. Rubrics are defined. Likers are just a tick mark on a scale that says from 1 to 4, where do you sit? 1 being low, 4 being high. Right, and I understood that when you explained it today, but I'm sure there, maybe not, maybe everybody else understands it. I need that explained to me. So that was one of my questions. Could somebody, not today, but provide me what this means and how we use it? Yeah. Because I didn't get that. And the same for the other metrics when we had, it was a rubric, but I still don't understand, okay, how is it going to be used and how is it going to be meaningful and useful? I just needed to add that I'm still in the dark on that part of it. So I just still have to sit down with me.
I'll join you on that.
So I'm glad that you brought that up, because those were.
What I'd like to do is that, as we get this data and put it in, what I'd like to do is come back to, in a work study, and actually give you the ratings of where we're at based on the metrics that we have, and I think it'll have clarity at that point, and it will explain it at that. Because at some point, what we want to do is actually make this document a public document that parents can go on and see how we're scoring ourselves each year. So I'd like to come back on that and do a more in-depth analysis.
By June, yep.
Yeah, we have mid-year, but I think that's a perfect segue to really, why we're here.
And I'm
Oh, I'm sorry,
okay, go.
I did a question.
I did, well, and it goes, bringing it back to why we're here. But I would agree, one of my questions or considerations, or the Hartman mentioned, was having that column, that measurable. What are we trying to obtain? I agree. I think that that's something that is very important to have. Which brings me back to segue into why we're here, in which I read through this document, which is how are we going to measure? Because it's based upon criteria that's set, but I still cannot identify what that criteria is with. So is it just that this document was put together, and so we say, okay, you achieved that goal and that requirement, and it's a check? Or is it that 80% of the principals are using the McNeil-Rell evaluation tool by June? And then, I'm not saying it, but I'm just using that as an example of really having to quantify. Because what will happen is we will come back and we all have different expectations of what that criteria was. And I think we need to clarify how we are going to evaluate what are the evaluation criteria to use, so that we are not in here, in May or in December and June. We have a mid-year as well.
We have a mid-year evaluation.
And in June, be able to determine.
And that's, I'd like to just kind of throw out that lens, because that's kind of what I was leading to us, is for us as a board to picture ourselves in December. What are we going to be talking about, and how is it going to be most productive? In June, we're obviously going to follow up. I mean, let's just say the way I see this is a huge piece of work, all-encompassing. We're going to be talking about this in December. We're also going to be talking about this in June. But on top of that, we have one specific decision to make, and that is regarding her 5% performance pay. And in my opinion, I feel like we need to narrow that down. We shouldn't be asking ourselves, for that bonus, if you want to call it. I mean, to your words, the idea of this bonus, this additional pay, in my mind, should be tied to something specific and measurable, where it is a little bit more of a check. That's going to be in addition to the conversations of how overall are we doing as a district on all these goals. So here today, our goal is to walk out of here knowing specifically what that conversation regarding her performance pay is going to be like for us in June.
So to Kim's point, some of those are deliverables and some are measurables.
Yeah.
And so the overall document is about progress. The ones that I narrowed for you, I said, these are the ones I think we need to laser in on and say, did we need to accomplish an employee handbook? We either deliver it or we don't deliver it, and it needs to be deliverable. So that's why I pulled these specifics out. And so I guess the question that one asks is which ones of these are deliverables and which ones of these are actual percentiles. And if you're looking for a measurable, you're going to want me to create so that in December when we visit, that I bring you a measurable scale on that so that you know whether progress is being made and what's the actual goal. But some of them are deliverables. It's a matter of we either get it done or we don't. We roll out an evaluation system or we don't roll it out.
And some are going to have metrics that are
metrics tied.
Correct. Right. That we can pull directly from and be aligned with our metrics.
But to move us along to December,
can we go through the list that Dr. Bardwell made as a suggestion? And just maybe in some kind of a systematic fashion, otherwise you're gonna be very.
Exactly.
Some kind of a systematic fashion, just say, first, yes, I wanna keep that, no, I don't, right? And then I get feedback from Dr. Birdwell, is this just a check, is this just a deliverable, or, no, this is a metric, and here's the metric I suggest that we use.
That makes all the sense in the world. How about you, everyone? Is that good?
Yes, because we have to do it by October 1.
Yeah, we have to have that before we leave today.
Oh, yeah, that's why we're here. That is correct. So, and that's our goal today, yes. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started then. So the SMART goal, is we're going to create and develop levels of instructional leadership. We have A, self-reflect for cabinet, mid-year review, and final evaluation.
I think we've done something like that.
Can you define to me what that means, that you would be responsible for your cabinet's review and evaluation being performed? Is that correct?
It's not only performing, it's actually, it's putting it in a formal fashion. It actually has measurables within it, which has
Okay. And for me, when I look at that too, it's not just that you've done evaluations, it's that you've been able to develop levels of instructional leadership, and that means you've attained that instructional leadership. So it would be that your cabinet, well, and this is instructional leadership, one of my questions, cabinet, principals, and I didn't know if there was any that there should be, you're always looking at one or two that maybe are developing,
Right.
but that 80% of them are effective.
But I would say,
Or
again,
greater.
just to remind, we are narrowing
But
down
that is narrowing down. Because
our,
what you don't want to have is, yes, I've done the formal review, but everybody but one is a developing instructional leader. At June 2018, I would hope that, given that one of the reasons I have to believe that you were hired was because you have the experience, the expertise, and you said, I'm going to come in and I can't train all my new cabinets. They've got to be effective going forward. So I would expect that the majority or greater of your cabinet is effective or higher. Does that make sense? You're not achieving instructional. I kind of, can I respond?
yeah.
I get what you're saying, because that's the goal. But I think it's dangerous to put an expectation on it, because it's better just to know it is what it is, right? Because when you force a expectation as opposed to a bell curve, you get 90% high-performing instructors, and that's
not what we already experienced.
That's what we had, right, exactly. So I would step back maybe on an expectation. You know, and first let's understand.
Construction of system first, if it doesn't exist, and then I wouldn't look at the results, because if you do that, because the cabinet is only 5 people, you're gonna get too close into personnel issues, and we start putting those up, it's gonna be disrespectful to that process. You don't see their end evaluations. The boards never see cabinet evaluations, I see them. What you want is that there is a good structure that's aligned to the overall vision of the district moving forward, that instructional leadership is being measured, where it hasn't been measured. Instructional leadership has not been measured. So we're shifting, and instruction become the number one priority, so it's create the structure and measure instruction. Now, we can talk about on a general level what that instrument looks like and what we're measuring, but you don't want to get into those results, because you're going to have an executive session for each person, and yet that is a very uncomfortable place to go.
And I guess I wasn't thinking so much if it is just the cabinet. I guess I was really not considering the cabinet when I was first thinking of this. It was really the principal.
Well, the principal evaluation is in there with the McGraw, and that, okay, so if I can answer that one. So here in about, I think it's this coming month, Dr. Sitton's going to bring you the results of teacher evaluations and principal evaluations from last year, highly effective, effective, developing, and effective. And you're going to see a significant shift in the year prior. The old rigid effect is gone. Now, that said, the evaluation system, one is different, it measures something completely different. Out of that, we'll look at, we still have to report highly effective in effect, that whole piece, but, those statistics have shifted, and we can continue to look at those, and we will look at those. But the instrument itself is the foundation piece here. It's putting the instruments in place.
So how do we measure that you have hired the right people for the right job, and they're doing what they're supposed to be doing?
That's where you get turnover.
Right, okay, but that's my question, because because that's what we're really measuring here, isn't it? Or is it-
I'm sorry.
How did we do that? Okay.
It is not our responsibility to evaluate and measure her direct reports. It is our responsibility to evaluate and performance measure Dr. Birdwell. If over time she is not doing her job, then our only recourse is to terminate her contract. We can't tell her who she can fire and who she can hire.
But I'm not talking about that.
But you want metrics. So yeah, in an indirect way, you kind of are. In an indirect way, you're kind of forcing her. And so I want to advocate more for the process, because this process, and you don't have this history, the mid-year evaluation and the final evaluation, for anyone beyond the superintendent, has not existed in any meaningful form in this district. This is a brand-new process, and it is completely inappropriate for us to talk about evaluating teachers if the cabinet's not going to be evaluated. So we have to start here, and I love the cascade word, because and start cascading this culture through the organization. If it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander, right? So I'm going to advocate for this process, and if Dr. Birdwell can institutionalize this evaluation process and grow it over time, because you can't just slam it in at one point. You can start here, yes, we're doing it for our most senior leaders. Then you go to the next level. I kind of feel like I'm sounding like him.
I know.
So you have to know where you're starting from. I guess that's what I'm trying to advocate for here, is I know where your head's at. I was there. I didn't realize when I was there, 2-3 years ago, and wanting metric, I didn't realize how we had nothing.
Yeah.
It was
like looking at the iceberg without addressing what's underneath.
Yeah. And so to me, this isn't check mark. This is she either did it or she didn't. Whether it is a good job or a bad job, as long as you did it.
Well, that's where I'm saying. You could do it, and it could be completely ineffective. You could have, I'm not saying you did it, you could have hired, you could look at all your instructional leaders, and you actually didn't end up developing them, because none of them reached the level of what we're all expecting. But how are we to know that? You could say, well, I did.
You'll know.
Well, and I guess that's that process.
I was going to say, we'll know. What we know in the past, we'll know then.
Let me help you with that. All these other things that are going on are evidence that they're working.
Yeah, I know that, but that's not what we're being asked to do. We need to achieve something, and what you're to achieve is to create and develop levels of instructional leadership.
Okay, let me
that's developing the process
goal
to obtain instructional leadership.
Let me take that to another level that might help you a little bit. You evaluate me on you get two different evaluations. This is the performance evaluation, which is your yearly kind of thing.
Yes.
But then you have my evaluation. My evaluation talks about all of this. During my evaluation, real evaluation, you're going to be able to get into a little bit more of the meat of some of these things that are going on. This is just performance. Performance is, here's an annual goal, did you get it done? In most districts, it's not formalized, it's a conversation between a board, but I like I want to know very clear what we're going to talk about in June. So luckily I align with you on that.
Right.
But again, I want you to know this isn't the only time you evaluate me. This is just performance. This is a separate thing under the statute that requires that we do it. Then there's the bigger evaluation of the superintendent, where you can get into some of the meat of this to say, well, we've made academic progress or we haven't, or, not only the cabinet was evaluated, but
I
was the executive.
I was lumping the two together.
And I think you separate the two, because you're gonna,
Because it's two different goals of the board, is to confirm that we have the right superintendent for this district, that's all of it. And then we have the goal of the board to say that
For
you
year
earn
three.
5% of our annual base.
That's what I'm not
That's
recognizing either. I
that's a
am
separate
thinking that
question.
this is something that would carry on. These will change because they will be done.
Yeah, and so when you look at page.
I had to have a mind shift.
Look at page 4 for just a second, in before Pamela, and just say, in the big evaluation, you're gonna look at all of these things being done.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's your whole level.
Okay.
All right, that'll help.
So narrowing it down.
I just have a question on, 1A. Self-reflect for cabinet, is that the same as your cabinet will start with a self-evaluation? And then you have that conversation, here's what you think of yourself, now let me tell you what I think of yourself. That's huge. I know that to be true.
And so that is exactly it. So self-reflection is, here are the correlates that we're looking at. They're gonna have time to come in and self-rate where you're at with it. And I'm gonna give them here's where I think you're starting. Let's have a conversation, and then let's see how your goals align with what we both believe you need to be focusing on. And then mid-year, we come back and say, okay, this is what we agreed we're gonna focus on. How are you measuring yourself on that? Where's the progress?
Okay. I have one more question, process question. Mid-year, is your vision that that's more of an informal mid-year check-in, or is that something formal that goes in their file mid-year?
It does not go in their file, but it's a little more formal than you realize, because they have to bring in evidence of progress.
Okay.
And they have to, since Cecilia is sitting here, if I'm looking at instructional leadership development with principals, I'm gonna have her bring me in the training schedule, what they've accomplished, where are they going national, we're gonna talk about their growth. And, how are you helping these principals grow, and that's the conversation that occurs. So that's the mid-year check-in, and then are we going to get there by the end of the year conversation of, okay, now look out the next 6 months, what are we gonna be able to get accomplished before she sits down with principals in June to see how they're doing. So, and they, by the way, this is mirrored all the way through the organization. They meet with the principals, they look at the school improvement plans, they do a mid-year check-in, and they do an end of the year. And we moved the principal's evaluations, before it was done in March, I think it was March, their final evaluations had to be done in March. Well, they need to be in June, they're 12-month employees, where they've been able to look now at their school data. So we've now moved their final eval till June. Hey, if you're not coming back, we're gonna know during your mid-year. I don't need to give you another evaluation in March to give you an April 15 deadline. You're gonna know when I meet with you mid-year that we're not on target with each other. So we've moved the final evaluation to June so that it's comprehensive. So this is a mirrored throughout the organization, administrative shift for us all.
And when is mid-year? Is that December?
It's between December and January, because when you look at the number of employees you have to get through, and all that goes on in December, it rolls, through December and January.
So that's respectful to the employee, that if together the conclusion is you probably aren't coming back, then they can jump in.
That's what I'm saying. What we try to do is anybody that's struggling, we meet with them in December, so that over holiday, they can brush up the resumes and get ready, because we want to be as respectful as possible. If we're not the best fit, it doesn't mean you're not going to have a good fit someplace else. But we want to have that respectful conversation, just like we would with teachers.
So 1A and B, are deliverables, obviously, checklist, yes, have these things been done, the cabinet, and then the McBell evaluation will use for all principals. We're comfortable with that, that's on the goal. B, check. 2A, so the SMART goal, the overall goal, the superintendent will create data measures focused on learning. A, benchmark assessments are aligned and usable by teachers. Board Member Kravitz.
I say usable, but what about being used? Usable means that they're available, but we don't know if they're actually being used.
Yeah, I think we could add this. I think that makes sense. Not only is it aligned, and we'll use the word timely, and then used. And I'll make the adjustments on that and get it back out to you. I'm going to implement it, like the word implement it, and implement it.
Well, and I'm gonna question this one a little bit, just from a realistic standpoint, and please clarify if I'm inaccurate, or just living in the past. The benchmarks being aligned, from what I've heard, has always been a struggle, has always been a very big challenge for years.
Yes.
So I guess what I'm trying to picture is what is the realistic expectation by that phrase, benchmark assessments are aligned. How are we judging that in June with this question on our, on our agenda? What would we be?
Yeah, we'd actually look at the metrics, and what we want to do is, here we have metrics. We want to look at we can pull, and I can sit with the team and say, okay, let's actually put, an ELA, say, third grade, we can actually pull and say, third grade, seventh grade, 10th grade, and pull certain assessments and say, we're going to look at these assessments during this time for this matter. But they have not been aligned in the past as well as they should have been, and therefore teachers didn't want to use them. They weren't timely in their results. So by saying aligned, timely, and implemented, then we can actually look at the results to see have they been showing improvement, because they should show improvement and they should predict the state assessment. So the metrics are to actually look at are the students showing growth? It's actually a growth level. And so, am I wrong, Dr. McCall? I mean, it's a deliverable metric for us. So we can actually come in December, and Dr. McCauley and I will show you the mid-year benchmarks to this point. And then in June, we'll show you how the benchmarks informed, and then we'll be able to look at actually the state results. So the purpose of a benchmark is to measure throughout teaching on whether or not you're going to hit your target. And we just haven't used them in the methodology that they should be used, but they should be being used by the teachers to inform instruction to change today, not wait till the end of the school year to know that I've missed a complete quarter of standards. So,
well, and their alignment with the state testing, we know in the past that has been significantly off.
yeah.
And so,
I mean, it's one thing to give a benchmark and say, here are the standards that are assessed, but, oh, by the way, you're not teaching the standard until spring. So I assessed something, I knew the kids weren't going to do well. Now they are actually aligned to, this is what we're teaching first quarter, and this is what we're measuring. Here's what we're teaching second quarter, here's what we're measuring, so we can actually look at student growth throughout the year. And that is a big move because it hasn't existed in Scottsdale to make it work properly. Why is the superintendent engaged in that? Is because it's such a big undertaking that it's taken multiple cabinet members and the superintendent to sit down and say, we will align this work and provide it in a timely manner. Well, and it's a big role.
and do you have more control now, with regards to the benchmark tests and the questions that are asked than in the past too? Because I know that was just always the work done to.
Both instruments are good instruments. It's what you know and the staff that actually controls the testing to actually make it work properly. They're still, both ATI and, what do we use? ATI is ATI does. If this was not a bad system, it's not having the knowledge of how to use it properly and not having the standards in place to begin with the curriculum. If your curriculum wasn't solid, your assessments got nothing. So, you know, the test got blamed for a bad curricular problem. The curricular problem is being fixed and aligned, communicated. Now you can actually assess with validity and reliability. So you'll have a deliverable, you'll have our metrics there. We're going to talk about metrics. We're going to be able to show you benchmark assessments. Now, what I think we ought to do, and then when we update this form and send it back to you, is we'll actually pull out grade levels that we think are significant. We'll work with the team on where we'll be looking at third grade assessments this year, and maybe it's going to be third grade, seventh grade, 10th grade. We'll look at building level. These are the benchmarks we will look at district level. Next year it might be second grade, sixth grade, and ninth grade. So we'll specifically pull out which ones we'll assess this year. Board Member Kirby?
All right, so, I want to comment on what you said last before I say the comment. I worry that if we focus on third, seventh, 10th, that organizationally, the rest of the grades will, we're not, the board's not looking at that, so we just have to laser focus here. And then the rest of the grade level falls to crap. And that's not the message I want to send.
And we'll miss all learners then.
Yeah,
Thank
right.
you.
So, which brings me back then to why I was raising my hand to begin with. I don't understand what metric we would use. Before I walk out of the room today, I want to have a very clear understanding of specifically what metric, and not know the, not just the words, here's the metric, but understand it. And I don't know if we can get there today.
Well, maybe I can shift this for you. Benchmarks were not consistently given in the past. What if the metric we look at our level is, what is the percentage of teachers who gave benchmarks across the district? So in other words, did all sixth grade teachers give their first, second, and third benchmarks? Because remember, in the past, it was optional. You didn't have to use them. So we look at the percentage of teachers using benchmarks. And it makes sense physically because you purchased a testing system that wasn't used. So now maybe the goal that at our level we should look at is it being used, and what is the percentile? And this year it's actually, I'm going to go back to, unfortunately, deliverable, but the deliverables, let's start our baseline of usage. Maybe it's as simple as we're going to look at the usage of benchmarks across the district. And so there is a metric tied to it of what is the percentage of teachers using it. Our goal is that everybody uses it where it's been assigned. Let's assess that.
Can I just add, we may be able to even correlate to the AC merit to help us identify if we were.
Not for this.
No.
Because of time. Yeah, this is a performance, this is my performance evaluation. We as a district might look at that later, but it shouldn't be tied to this.
That was kind of my question is, are there two benchmark periods? There's a December or whatever, and then there's a May, so we can look at both. There's three, perfect. So we could see the percentage of usage, and hopefully it can,
And it continues to go based on the results.
move.
The elementaries do 4.
Okay.
High schools do 3.
Okay.
And so we could look at, I think the first thing as a district is to say, are we using benchmark assessments? Maybe that's the bigger question. And let's measure the usage of benchmark assessments. And so are all algebra teachers giving benchmark assessments? Are all algebra 2 teachers giving benchmark assessments? Because in the past, the answer to that is less than 10% gave their benchmark assessments.
Okay, so the metric is simply, when we sit here in June, it's having the data of just the percentages from each of those testing.
Yeah.
No growth targets because we don't have the
No
baseline.
growth target, we don't have baseline, but we actually look at using benchmark assessments. That in itself was just sort of that data-driven culture.
Can you take a baseline, of, let's say, last year's last benchmark and the percentage taken?
Participation rate?
Usage.
Absolutely. Is that possible to get that information?
I can get it from our participation rate, what percentage of students took it, it'll tell us if all the teachers gave it. Well, 95% are taking it, then all the teachers are giving it, for example. But if only 72% are taking it, then we know we have.
That is a baseline.
We'll look in the data on it, but if we look at usage, I think you get a better metric. So here, I think what I'm hearing you say is, hearing you semi-agree with, let's look at the usage of benchmark assessments. We've purchased it, we've paid for it, is it being used? Now, remember that the purpose of a benchmark is to inform learning. So are we doing that? And that can be measured. We can give you a metric for that.
And is it possible to look at growth by the time we see June?
Well, there's no doubt that it gives us a prediction of how our students should perform on the standards because we're looking at the results of that. I think that I would say let's add that layer next year because I think this is our first good, clean year of benchmark assessments. And while they're raising the curriculum standards and guidelines,
Still kind of building the culture.
we're still building the validity of academic rigor. We have a test, but is it at the academic rigor we want? Well, so then your predictability of how you'll score in the state may not be as clean as it could be.
Well, that's it, addressing that culture, our teacher culture surrounding benchmarks is very low, very negative. Changing, I'm sure, over this
So we'll
past
give
year.
you student percentage taking teacher usage. So we'll give you those two. We'll give you those 2 percentages. I think those are good, clean metrics that we can talk about.
Okay, so we're comfortable with.
Can I clarify, is it going to say something like benchmarks aligned, timely, and implemented still, or are you gonna?
Yeah, aligned, timely, and implemented, and I'll make the change for the board on that, and then what it's gonna do is show the usage, the metric will be the usage, of the benchmarks.
Thanks.
All right, so then we're on to, that's right, 2B, employee handbooks, employees, teachers. That's a deliverable. That's a deliverable. We all agree that we need to get that done.
So June 2018? No.
Yeah, we hope not.
Oh, God, earlier. Oh, earlier.
Sorry, earlier.
Our goal is to have, our goal at this moment is in December to bring a board. We're using an outside company to expedite.
Are you then gonna say in June, if it came in January, that she missed it?
Well, yes, but I don't know that that would say that you didn't earn your performance pay, if that's the only thing that was.
So December-ish.
So, yes. You missed it, does that mean you
got that,
I mean, you've got more, if it was the only thing and you missed it, then yeah, but it's not the only thing that's determining performance.
Okay.
Well, it's not a black and white, please understand.
I get that, that's fine.
Employee handbook, I mean, obviously,
So put June 2018.
but June and,
I mean,
Like June and, yeah.
But the expectation that it's December, or put January 2018.
Right. Because remember, there is a committee attached to this, and that process, you just never know how that's gonna roll.
let's use the official. But in reality, governing board, please know that, we understand that expediting, an employee handbook to create, if we look at our lower, operating objectives, morale, people, the sooner the better. So we're working diligently to get that done, and there are 30 people on the committee, so you know how difficult that is. Board Member Kirby.
We have handbooks classified as well, correct?
Yes, done.
Okay, so should this not just be the certified employee handbook, but should it be all handbooks?
Let's make it certified, because it is
We
certified.
just want it to be certified.
Well, I think the classified and the administrative are done,
Right.
correct?
Oh,
So for a goal, that's
okay, that's what I wanted to clarify.
already done.
I didn't know they were done.
The most important one is what we're working on.
Okay.
All right, ready to move on then? We move on to 3, the superintendent will align fiscal processes to classroom focus, overall goal. Progress is made in increasing teacher pay. I guess the question here is, do we want to put some numbers to this?
We've charted it, and last year we charted the progress that we made, and what we would want to do is see progress moving towards that 10% on that 4-year goal, so we can show an actual chart that shows how we're moving. And what you will look for is progress during budget finance time, spring, with, and I think, I'm trying to think the time frame that you officially adopted the budget.
Before 1, 2, 3 was adopted,
Yeah.
so, in my mind, I don't.
So it's part of the budgeting, but we'll be able to show that in this room. And I'm comfortable with the June timeframe, but it'll be, as we discussed, this will happen this year, and it's a 4-year period. Each year will show the percentile.
And I think that raises that. Go ahead. The flexibility, if you do put, the goal is to raise it to 10% in 4 years. But you're flexible, because you can have outside environmental issues that come up,
Right.
and then you have to take those into account and say, well, we thought we'd make this progress, but we didn't because of, and then you go, oh, yeah, but you did everything you could. We saw that you did everything you could, but we're still moving forward, or couldn't move forward because of X, Y, Z.
Board Member Kirby?
I just want to say that, this is, for me personally, this one is the one I'm most excited about on this whole piece of paper. Because, and what we're doing is we're tying Dr. Birdwell's performance pay to increasing teacher pay.
Right.
I'm okay with just not us sitting, we do not need to sit here today and say it needs to go up by 2% or 3%. We can't do that here today. That's a budget discussion. But what we can say is we will make some progress towards that 10%. We are committing to that, and we are holding Dr. Birdwell accountable to that.
Member Hartman?
Yeah, and to that point, that's why when I looked through the whole deck, that was the one metric that I thought we really should articulate. not only because it's, not only because we as a board decided it's the right thing to do, but because reporting on this actually is a very positive thing in the community. Metrics should be transparent and visible, and this is just one example of one that we can just keep going back to. The more transparent we are, the more, because if we do all this, and we don't articulate it well, people forget. It's really incumbent upon us to keep the right things really forefront, so people do understand that there's some heavy lifting.
We should have a thermometer on the HR page on the SUSD website, that where are we over 4 years of getting to 10%?
Could be, yeah, that's a good idea. Put that out.
Okay, all right, so, Rebecca.
And I don't know if this is where it comes in, but something that you have mentioned in the past, which I think should also be a focus, is doing something with the 301 money that's in the base pay. And I don't know how you're addressing that or where the focus is or anything. I just don't know.
Maybe part of the discussion, it's a problem.
Well, yeah, Dr. Bergel mentioned that in Chaparral. It was in Chaparral.
So that, we've been working on taking that out while increasing.
It kind of fits under the fiscal, more.
Yeah.
I just don't know.
I do see that more as an overall goal as opposed to tied specifically to performance.
Because we have to take that out.
Yeah.
The base pay is not the
That's
base pay in the
8%. Bigger issue, yeah.
I think most
So
of
we're comfortable though with this language and this understanding on this item. Okay, excellent. So we're rolling here. 4, superintendent will align academic focus to the design rebuild of the school. So 4A is develop traditional academy at Pima. So if this is by June 2018, what would you There's a lot of training that as a check?
Yeah, it's training of teachers, it's materials, because they will open in August as a traditional school, so it's a curricular training and shift, so we should be able to measure and say we've trained all the teachers in Saxon math. We have purchased all of the Saxon materials. We have changed in, I can't remember the name of their language program for traditional solving. And then we have adopted materials. That is the big significant shift to traditional, and it must get accomplished in a timely fashion. Okay. Yeah. And then the IB is the training that's taking place as well. And so we have to keep that focus going forward. Application submitted. And the application is submitted. So there's and then when you talk about the science lab, it's the training again for teachers in the new lab. As that lab opens, teachers must be trained, because right now they're trained in traditional methodology, but they're coming into a modern 21st century integrated science lab. So there is a significant teacher training shift there that must occur.
So is this just a yes or no in June?
And if we've accomplished it or haven't.
Right.
You have to
That's
deliver.
what I'm hearing.
Deliverables. Thank you.
Everyone comfortable with that idea? Okay, then fiscal dashboard for project transparency, that's a yes or no.
What does that mean?
Yeah, that means that we have the financial dashboard up for all of the building and construction, and that we can monitor it on a monthly basis as expenses come in and expenses go out.
But what is the
Is it like,
Laura-
what's been spent?
Is that
Laura and Lewis's
is it
dashboard.
what they've already showed the board? Or is it a completely different software tool?
They've shown you the pull out from the dashboard, but the actual dashboard is a software that we're loading up, that you'll be able to go on as board members and look at it on a daily basis and see movement of dollars.
Just as board members, or is this for the community?
I can answer based on the conversation we had.
I think he had to test it.
The goal is to put it out on the website, so community see that dashboard that we're looking at. I really do think it's community visibility.
Okay.
The board can actually go in behind in the layers, the community can see the front reports.
So can we get it to the community point by June?
I believe so.
It sounds like from what they said.
I know they've put it out there for a little testing. They're testing it to make sure it's accurate and working properly. So we should be able to get it up.
So should we add then, something about community on here so that,
Just put the website right after transparency, support, and,
Community visit,
community, I put,
community viewing, accessibility?
Yeah.
Well, accessibility,
okay.
might mean that,
Yeah, the
what
website
that viewing would be.
The website is, available on website.
Available on website.
So, yes, board member Hubbard? To stay on the agenda, but did our number one school put a stake on themselves? Not in here. Where's superintendent designs the rebuild of schools? Any mention of, status of Hopi or?
No, because they're not a curricular shift. So what we did was
curricular
these are academic focus and design. So the academic work there, so you've got, the PIMA academic shifts, the, IB program, at the middle level, which is, Mountainside. And then Cheyenne has the lab, big science shift in the lab. The other schools are design build, they'll be in the dashboard, but they're not a curricular shift.
I mean, one really big important component, I think, of this is just the whole fiscal responsibility, stewardship of the bond,
That's the dashboard.
the dashboard. Okay, is there something, because that's really kind of the communication of this, there's something around just doing it appropriately.
Well, that, by looking at that, you'll see that it's following the voters pamphlet and staying within the guidelines of the voters pamphlet. So, you'll be able to see PIMA, you'll be able to see HOCOM, you'll be able to see Hopi, you'll be able to see Cheyenne. Anything tied to the bond will be in the dashboard, including the football fields, the tracks, everything that we said that we were going to do. And that'll be on the dashboard.
So fiscal dashboard is really, it's also, it's overall effective management and fiscal dashboard.
It's really the dashboard of bond projects. So we put the bond projects. It is the bond projects. All I did was pull out the curricular shifts from them.
I'm wondering is it the word rebuild of schools in that goal that kind of takes your mind to something else that we're not addressing? And is that maybe since you're talking curricular, maybe, or I don't know, is that, at first I was like, oh, we're gonna be doing this because I heard rebuild of schools, so I'm thinking it's gonna be real construction focused.
But again,
It's not, so I don't know.
pulled out very specific things out of those overarching goals. But Board Member Kirby.
I think it's aligning academic focus with the design rebuild of schools. So with PIMA makes sense to me, Cheyenne makes sense to me. I think it's the middle level IB that I'm, because then I'm thinking, well, why not Mandarin at Desert Canyon, and why not dual language at Pueblo, right? So, because there is no design or rebuild at Mountainside.
Yeah, you're right, that is true. Let's take that one off. That's true. Board Member Hartman?
So it just seems to me, one of the top priorities that's not articulated on here then is just the fiscal management, fiscal operational management of $290 million.
But it is, that's what the dashboard is all about. It's not about anything else. The dashboard only reflects the bond.
But by making it at the highest level, saying academic focus with design of the rebuild, it's sort of bringing it, I mean, it just seems to me $290 million management is pretty important.
That was your goal, governing board, align fiscal resources to the classroom. And then under design, you said build designs and program management. So under your goals, that was to align with, you said building designs and program management. So my SMART goal was to align year's academic focus with the design and rebuild of schools. So PIMA has an academic shift. HOCOM does not have an academic shift. It's just a straight rebuild. Cheyenne had an academic focus to its rebuild. And then the transparency is the dashboard. The whole purpose of the dashboard is to put all of the finances of the bond online so that people can see that it's being spent in the categories that they approve it. And then you'll notice that in the goals as well, we also created that oversight committee. And then, of course, we have external auditing of those accounts as well that will come into play. So, I mean, there are layers and layers, and they're not all up on this particular, but there are layers and layers inside the overall goals.
I mean, I'm willing to let it go. I guess the board.
I'm struggling to understand, is there something specific, again, and measurable, that you're thinking needs to be in here for her performance?
I mean, I can give you the percentage for each of the categories.
I'm hearing the overall goal of the $290 million bond. I think that's built into us, but again, we're pulling out very specific and measurable goals to tie to her performance pay.
And I can get over, because it is maybe semantical, it's just that huge responsibility of the $290 million bond management is implied within a dashboard. Just sometimes it's implying to it enough. I mean, are you comfortable with that, or?
Well, what would you, okay, I think I know where you're headed. So how would you, if I may ask, do you have an idea of how you would rewrite these? Since it's implied in there, how would you rewrite these to make it more explicit? What would you say?
Can I add to that? Yeah. Because I'm just thinking off the top of my head here again, not making any statements that's true or not, but when I hear just because we extended in the category, to me doesn't say we've managed it well, just because we've sent it in the category. So maybe you're trying to get to additionally well it's been managed. Is that where you're going?
Okay, but wait, time out. That is such a huge part of what we do in the job. Is that really my performance? Because then if that's what I'm wondering, stop all the rest of it, make that performance. That alone is a huge part of what we do. So on a performance pay, your 5% you want to give me isn't worth what you're going to ask me to do on that, because that's what I do on a bigger part of my job. That's what a big part of Laura's job is. That's a big part of Lewis's job. It's a big part of the accounting we do. I don't want you to think this goal is to say that we are taking lightly the oversight of $228 million. My God, every time that you approve a project, it's scrutinized. Every time a project gets approved by the governing board, it's scrutinized. Every time, the vouchers come in, it's being scrutinized, and we have layers and layers and thousands of invoices that get scrutinized. To come in and say, on your performance pay, we're going to scrutinize you on the thousands of invoices.
Right.
So maybe,
so I think, can I try to interpret what might be going up in here in your head? I think Kim is looking at these performance goals, because I think she often does this, as a communication vehicle to the community of what we believe as a board is important. And so it's not so much that when she said it's implied, and it's implied in this, and then I asked you, well, how would you make it more explicit? Mm-hmm. I don't know that Kim's trying to change anything. I think she's trying to better communicate with this. This will be a public document. She's trying to better communicate what we mean by these. Is that right?
I introduce you to my husband. Yes. Yes, it was about communication, and something else Dr. Burwell said that I had lost sight of, which is, this is about the 5%.
Right.
Additional compensation.
So you're okay with it?
Yeah, I'm okay with it, yeah.
Okay. Or do we even have the fiscal dashboard in the performance pay?
But I think that's a very easy deliverable that we all agree is important. Our community would appreciate it. We'd appreciate as board to be able to pull that up, and that's a deliverable. I see no reason tying it to the 5% performance pay. It's a great step.
It'll be done no matter what, but what's right.
Exactly. I think it is good to highlight again, and that's what I think we're doing with the narrowing of the overall goals. We are highlighting what's important, and that level of transparency is important. So, I'm very confident in that deliverable, yes. All right. There, we can move on. 5, superintendent will create, develop levels of communication, overall goal. Narrowing it down, communication network. I assume you're talking about just actually creating one.
Well, yeah, right, and that's the spider web that we've created by every building having communication levels, because clearly, last year, there was a gap between district office and building level and then community. So now what we've done is we're creating a network from the district to the school to the parent, and that communication network. How do you measure that? I think we measure whether or not the function of the network is working. Is communication being delivered? Do people feel they have a voice? I know we got checker surveys I particularly don't, but we will be asking the group that serves on those at the end of the year, will be specifically asking them questions about communication and voice, and seeing if they feel like they've had input, and that input has made a difference. So,
I'm a little concerned about the subjectivity of that, especially considering our lens for the 5% performance pay. When I read it, I had the idea of being confirmed that every principal has established a communication network at their site. They have individuals, and they've basically assessed how they communicate to them and their expectations, and maybe that's the check mark that we're looking for this.
Are you also,
Board members, Kravitz.
are you also saying that there'll be some, review or check to see how those communications teams, communicate back to their sites?
I would hate to, for this 5% performance pay, be critiquing how those members of the communication network are happening. I wouldn't want to survey that.
Did you communicate back to your site? And I don't necessarily think, again, I'm speaking out loud, it doesn't necessarily be part of the 5%. I just want to know that there's a communications team, they're communicating back to their sites, and I would be interested to know from the teachers at the site, when you've had a question, have you gone to that communication team and asked?
So let me maybe put it on 30,000 for you.
Again, it doesn't have to be part of the 5%.
It's designed and implemented, and then the last thing is that we can actually record that those meetings are taking place. So there's the network meetings that happen in the building, there's the network meetings that happen at the district level. We don't necessarily assessing the results, we're assessing as it has implemented and are in meeting. Now, I'm not going to say we're not going to assess the results, because I think we will, but I don't know that it needs to be part of this measurement.
Right. Board member Becker.
So when I read communication network, because I was in that communication meeting, I understand that is a noun now. It is an actual model that has been developed.
It's multiple models.
And, there were 2 or 3. And so when I saw this, I went back to what you said earlier, this is one of those process things, because we're still in the beginning. So that we actually get that model up and running. But when this conversation was happening, I'm thinking, they're thinking of it differently than I was thinking of it. Because now I'm thinking of it as that communication network is a model in which it's the principal and the 2 teachers. They have their meeting, and then they come together. The second part of that was when the principals get together, right, and talk about it. Then you say there's another third.
So during the model, it's a principal with 8 to 10 individuals, 2 parents, classified and certified, who meet on campus. And there's a district level, they bring the principal and 2 members, come to a district meeting that meets with the superintendent. And then there is a superintendent with district level representatives that meets as well to look at issues on the executive, directors, and instructional coaches level. So these are layers in your organization. At that building level, where we've been really wanting to drive greater communication, that network has parents, teachers, and classified employees. That school community is represented in communication.
So that's the last model that was in my head when I looked at it. I'm glad you pointed out the other layers, because I multiple layers on that one.
So how I would read it is, those 3 models are being implemented.
Yes.
And at the end of June, when we look at this, we'll say, you could say, yes, every school did, XYZ missed it for this, and that's, that happens. So, is that what we're thinking?
Yes, so we're gonna say there are
Make sure there was
30 teams.
they would be happening, and we would just see the process.
30 teams, they went through these many meetings, and here were the topics of the meeting.
So that's the deliverable you will be able to
Deliverable.
check.
Perfect.
Wonderful. B, teacher laptop usage. I'm sorry, board member.
So back to visibility, should these, agendas and conversations, should they be kind of posted on some website and?
The teams, my understanding is the teams are posted, the agendas will be posted, and any summary of notes that they have will be posted for their staff to see.
And some type of mechanism that others, if they want to contribute to some conversation or ask further questions around it, they can do, I mean, is that up to each school to figure out how they ensure that this information trickles to everybody?
Yeah, schools have designed those,
But it's up to the school.
so basically there's a format that says, positive messaging is the first portion of it. So what's the positive messaging coming out of our school? Second, district messaging. So what are some district messaging that needs to be communicated clearly and concisely? Site-wise messaging. So it's the myth busting. So rumors going around in our school, what are myths, what's the fact, what's not the fact? Rumors going around at the district level, fact versus non-fact. And then what's the positive messaging we as a school are wanting to message with our community about what's going on our campus. And it might be instructional, it might be about student achievement. And then when they meet, they talk about those three areas and how they're going to communicate that out. Broken into three categories.
Board Member Becker? So just following up with that, so maybe, am I thinking correctly, that maybe in the next year, that additional layer you talked about, if it wasn't happening, we would put that. I'm just saying that that's the possibility.
Yeah.
Right now, it's the beginning of that.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, I have to remember this is saying for this year.
All right, teacher usage. The question again is, how are we measuring this?
Yeah, there's a metric. We can actually pull off the system data because the teachers are now doing, and accessing curriculum, accessing materials so that we actually can measure. We had last year's measurement of, and there's an unbelievable difference, already, because we went ahead and did our first month measurement, and just, accessibility is phenomenal.
So
the teachers are actually doing out.
Teachers accessing
curriculum materials, that's great resources that are available for teaching. And when you see the first report in December, when I bring it to you, and you look at the baseline of where we were last year, and you look at the comparison of where we are now, it's night and day. Who would have thought that a simple thing as a appropriate tool would have made such a significant difference?
So this one I'm struggling on even why it's at this level in your, because let's just, for granted that we were at 10%, and let's say in December we're at 70%, and then in June we're at 60%. So what's the point? I mean, why do you want it in here?
I don't know, because the reason I wanted it in there was more about the frustration that teachers have with the inability to use technology and access materials for instruction, and whether we passed that's like a one-year goal, how we corrected and fixed the system that was broken for teaching, so that now teachers have greater accessibility. So my first communication network meeting was talking with the staff of what went well, what is still missing, and they gave us a laundry list, and so then we were able to give to the IT team and say, here's where instruction is still missing. We're able to go back and make the corrections to improve the accessibility for instruction, which then we know has a positive impact on learning. So because it was such a fault in the district, I put it on as focus, but it's neither here nor there. We're doing it, it's happening, and it's good. Whether or not it needs to be part of my performance isn't I don't know. It's not that important. It's important, but not important to me on my performance. Right? Put it that way. We're doing it, we're going to do it no matter what. But I will tell you, it was such an aha in the communication network to have
the teachers do that, teach our, what went well, gives feedback, and maybe phone me, being member, she's head of IT, and so she got this feedback, what's still not working? So the communication network worked to be able to look at a really important goal, to then improve on it, and then look at what were the next, what it did was help prioritize what had to happen next, and then next, and then next, so it's communication and teaching coming together. So, but is it critically valuable for this particular one? No, it's exciting to see it happen.
That's why you want it on there, because it's exciting.
I mean, because we were having so much, yeah, well, and give me a cracker and I got excited.
Well, and it segues, and I like how a lot of these are linked and always come back to the academic achievement, which is really right again in the district. Because this, the teachers are using the laptops, and this, they're accessing it. It will all organically happen. So I'm not advocating to take it out. I'm curious.
It's kind of an unusual one to probably see there. It was the connection back to teaching that was so, I got excited that our teachers were accessing the curriculum.
I think it has really two pieces that impact communication. One is the communication with teachers and access to the information they need to improve their teaching and using the resource materials. The other one aligns with C, the parent engagement. If I'm a teacher with a laptop that goes with me everywhere, I will be able to have an easier way to communicate with my parents, stay in touch with them, utilize my email and communicate with my parents, check attendance, tardies, as opposed to I only have a desktop unit, I can only do that during my time, versus a laptop that allows them to be more flexible and then more engaged with the parent communication. So that's the
and they reflected on that too, the fact that their classroom is now mobile, the difference it made to them. You know, the kids can be tucked in bed, I now just pull my laptop out, I work on my class, I can upload information, and when I checked yesterday, the teacher websites, I went into looking at, is the correct material, have they provided, their objective, for the material, and then one teacher was so excited, resource links for parents. They've identified the website they can take my child to on the weekend and work on mathematics or grammar or vocabulary development that are grade appropriate, age appropriate for that grade level. And I looked at it and said, as a parent, thank you. You just narrowed down my work I want to do with my child, and I know where to go for that educational link. So the tool was the step of doing something that allowed us to communicate, access. It's taken us to another level as instructors. So yeah, I got excited about it.
Cultural shift. It's part of that cultural. Yeah.
Okay.
good. C, parent engagement, measured by the parent attendance and
That's huge. That is huge. That is. It came from parent communication. It came from master communications with parent groups that would come in and meet with me. It came from the meetings we just had. So when we're looking at these, that parent partnership, we just haven't focused enough on that development. And then as I began to read some of the information I got from Dr. Johnson from the principals, their parent communication is a heavy focus on their campus, but it wasn't aligned to the thing that parents want. They talked about communication, but they didn't talk about what we're talking about here. So that helps us realign those school goals to be about what's really important to parents. And number one is, I want to access my grade book. And that's not, I haven't seen that on any of those, but I know they're going to get changed. So it was a disconnect. When I talked with parents and I saw what principals were writing, what they thought was good communication, what parents are wanting, there was not connected. So I thought, let's make it a district focus, and then I can layer it all the way through the organization. That's what I told them. Plus, that attendance issue is huge. Yeah. That can talk about
Absolutely. Yeah, we don't get to this culture without cultural learning without those expectations. Remember her?
That actually was my comment. That was an aha from what you said before from me, which is, and I don't know if it's worth identifying, being explicit on here once again, but it's that parent partnership that is critical. That's another, and being, not only is it cultural, but being explicit about it. I mean, we're going to do this for you, i.e. get the grids up there, create an environment where teachers use technology proactively, timely, blah, blah, blah. But we're also going to create awareness on what tardiness and attendance and what the conditions for success look like for your learner and pull you into the process, right? I mean, that's really, it really.
And I'm imagining that this will be, an ongoing goal. I mean, let's get it, get good baseline data on it now, and then let's keep looking at how we're gonna progress in this area. This is huge, this is a missing link. We think we partner with parents, but we've not been partnering with parents. Matter of fact, in one of the parent meetings, and I don't know if you remember which one I missed, the parents said they were so happy that we're gonna do the secret shopper moment, because it starts from the moment the parent enters the school. Are we welcoming? Is there good customer service? Do I feel welcome? When I met with some parents in Cuba, quite honestly, one of the things that came out with my parent meetings there was we want to be welcomed on the campus. We want to be a part of the campus, and we didn't feel that was happening. So this parent as partners has lots of layers to it, but the measurable piece I thought we should start with is informing the parents how critical the role is in attendance, targets, and grades, and how but I will tell you, we're not ignoring, and you'll see in the layers, the secret shoppers, the customer service piece, those are all in there as well, because, and I want you to know, everywhere I went that I've talked with, the parents applauded us on the secret shoppers. They're so thankful we're looking at that fund, because parents need to be greeted well. And for the moment they enter, we want them to feel welcome. If you don't feel welcome, you'll be more likely to choose some other place to go.
Shout out on page 13 on all stakeholders.
Board Member Kirby? Technical question. Do teachers have the ability to get statistics on how many parents or how frequently parents access their teacher website? So I've got a class of 30 English students. I want to know what parents are actually going on my website and looking at grades. Not so maybe grade books.
No, Google. It should be
Google has analytics.
We can definitely validate that they can, and we put out an instruction on how.
So teachers could go out to see if parents are trying to look at grades.
It sounds like it's a yes, but I
I'm
want to
not
hear
sure
about
what
it.
So, yes, Simra, we can run you through statistics. I'm not sure if the parents, or the teachers can with you.
Right, that's why I want to.
Well, you can enable it for them.
Yeah.
I think I might be able to.
It's just a question. I mean, it's not for real. It gets that.
But I really like what Pam's saying, it's more important for us, it's important for the teacher.
Right, even if it's my time worth it.
Yeah.
Well, and if I'm only 20% of my parents are reaching them this way, well, maybe there's something I can do to increase it to 25%, to 30%, to 40%, and what does that look like? And that's
And I got, before I lose this, I am thinking of the teacher here, because we have had experiences in the past where the parents will go into a teacher and like, oh my God, I can't believe you gave my student a C for the report card. You know, how dare you? Well, then the teacher could go in and say, no, you haven't been looking at grades. It's been building for the entire semester. Where have you been?
Yeah.
That's why
So where have you been part is a major component of it.
I was going to make that the other side of the coin to me is, yes, we are welcome to parents and feel them online, but we also have to make it clear the expectations of parents, right, that you will be engaging your student teaching, you will get them there on time, and that is helpful to our teachers, and obviously helpful to all our other students as well. But there's this flip coin of parent expectations of their level of engagement in their student learners. One thing that came up, though, is trying to narrow this down, the use of parent view. Marshall and I were just discussing the fact that quite often I have my kid open it first, and then she shows me what's happening. I'm not sure it's a fair measurement to just look at how many parents are logging in. 'Cause it's just in your everyday usage. You don't always do that. It's
Parents, so
Tuesday.
parents,
Yeah. Like you have your kid open it up, or you can. And, I mean, obviously it's gonna take a lot of time, and I don't know what the realistic time frame before we actually start getting parents more confident, and students more confident, that I'm gonna go in and it's gonna be up to date. Because now you have a lot of parents who've been here for years that they don't bother at this point. It's gonna be a big culture shift.
My question to Anna is, it's called a point-in-time measurement. So if I go back to last year and I take a week of, before the programs, can we pull data that's, how many parent views we were getting on a campus? The reason that point in time is important is that, let's say that's considered one of the highest volume times, is the week before grades come out. Parents are checking, that's a high volume time. If I took that time and I took this time this year before grades, a week before, and we say we're going to take that point in time and measure, are we getting more hits? Well, what have we done? We back that backwards and we say, this is the timeliness of our grades, here's when we're updating. Then what a principal wants to look at. If I say that every Thursday night we update grades, so parents, Friday, you can view those before you go into the weekend so that your student has a chance to make things up over the weekend. What I would want to measure as a principal is I'm going to look at how many parents are viewing from Friday till Monday the parent portal to see whether or not parents are partnering with me. I sent the message out that says we update on Thursday. I ensure that my teachers update. Now I look for the parent viewing during the 3 days. Come Monday, I go back, I do a reflection, I'm able to monitor. I send another message out to parents and say, hey, 50% of you access grades. Please know we are going to continue to keep grades updated on Thursday and measure Friday through Sunday how many parents have viewed your students' grades. Please take advantage of this opportunity. And then as principal, I measure that. But why is that important to me? Because that tells me the parents are partnering with me on how their student is doing. Then lets me as a teacher go in, and when I have to unfortunately give a poor grade and the parent says, how'd my kid get that D? Say, well, have you been tracking? Have you been logging on? Have you been watching? Because I've had these, plus I sent you this email, this email, and this email. Is your student intercepting your emails? Have you been receiving? Because in the old day, it was, did your student beat you to the mailbox? But now I can say as a teacher, boy, I send out, and if I remember correctly, there are teachers who send out automatics to parents, grades have been updated, and it blasts out an email that says your grades have been updated. Does Similar allow us to do that as well, where a teacher can send out a grades have been updated, or do they just do that through their regular email?
They can send messages out through parent view. Granted, we have the correct email address of the parent in there.
It does encourage you to keep your emails up to date. So but it is a baseline, Ms. Berger, just to go back to the point of this being it's a baseline, but it's not been an area that we've focused on as a district, but I'm hearing it from parents. So when I'm out in parent meetings, I'm hearing the need to be more diligent with our updating grades so that parents can have conversations. I'm hearing from principals the need to have students arrive on time and to have students in class. So it begins us down a pathway of building a partnership with the parents. So it's the principal's voice, it's the parent voice trying to come together in a system. Now, we may at the end of this say, it's not getting us where we want to be, but let's have the dialogue about it of, is this a good starting place to build parent partners?
Kirby, would it be possible in December, when you bring the baseline metrics on attendance and tardies, or not just here's where we at as a district, but, for example, on attendance, this particular school has an opportunity, or the first 2 weeks of school for all schools have an opportunity, or seniors have an opportunity to be, to start to hone in where do we want to focus, laser focus?
Yes.
And the reason I ask, I think I've shared with you, there's a school in Alex near and dear to my heart that just put the hammer down on seniors this year on attendance and tardies. Clearly, they were having a problem. And so instead of just, throwing a wide net, they lasered in on, this is who we want to improve. And so that's kind of what I would like to see in December. I don't know if the rest of the board agrees with that. Is it a school? Is it the first 2 weeks of school? Is it a grade level? I don't know.
Well, and I want to take that even a little bit, yes, and this is exactly the kind of conversation I want to be able to have. But the other side of that too is where we have open enrollment choice.
Yes, there's another one.
The one school that I looked at and visited with the principal on, parents are choosing the school, and then their absenteeism is skyrocketing. And partly because I'm responsible as a choice parent to drive my child to that school, and I have high absenteeism. Is that the best fit for the child then? The conversation has to occur of, your child must be here on time. It may behoove you to put your child in their home school where they can walk to school or take a bus and make sure that they're there. But you cannot have excessive absences up into the 30s and the 40s. And your child's academics are reflecting this poor attendance. So parent, either you got to get your child here, or we also may need to take a revoked status of open enrollment to help you have a more successful environment for your child.
So what I'm hearing you say is that by focusing on this year could drive policy changes.
It could be,
We have the policy implemented and revocation of based on policy change. Like, for example, I was at a school, I was there early, it was a middle school, a parade of tardies. It was ridiculous. And when I talked to the principal, it was not out of district open enrollment, but it was an open enrollment, in district open enrollment. And so the possible solution might be to run a bus. That could be a policy discussion.
it could have impact. The reason that these bills are so critical is that it could have a bigger impact on operations.
Yeah.
It could be policy, it could be processes, it could be enforcement of a good policy that exists. It's enforced, hasn't been brought to the forefront kind of moment.
Yeah. Okay, Board Member Arden? And not only enforcement, but support of it. That is a great beginning conversation. Hey, as a parent, you have responsibility and an opportunity, you impact your learners' outcome and the success. Right, and so it just creates the content to be able to have a meaningful conversation. Now, something else, there's different options to take, but I think it's a really interesting way to help quantify in a formative, not a summative way, right? We're just collecting information to understand a very complex open enrollment environment, and how does that impact the learning conditions for the school and for the students. So it's an interesting way to think about it.
And that said, I'm going to take this one step further. I'm going to reach out to a couple of the choice charters and ask if they would be willing to do an attendance study together to see if they're reaching the same problems with those choices. Are they having attendance problems? Is it a choice school issue? So anyway, it opens the door for lots of conversations, but I'm interested to see, doing some conversations with one of the charter friends here in the city of Scottsdale. It might be an education of the community at large to say, choice is good, but choice means I'm dedicated to the success of my child, and it starts with attendance, arrive on time. So we're able to together send a message to the Scottsdale community at large to say, we are creating a pattern for life. You don't show up to work late, and we need you not to show up to school late. And so, so I think anyway, back to the point of this, the reason I think this is important and I'd like to keep it is, I think it's an area we have not focused on.
Incredibly important, yeah.
It's a cultural, that's another example of a cultural shift, right? Structure drives behavior, and that's a really very physical example of structure physically being. So how do you
Right, because you don't want teachers delaying instruction for 15 minutes in a 50-minute class, because they know that 20% of the kids don't show up on time, therefore I don't get into the meat of teaching for 15 minutes, because the rest of the students are missing out, because 20% don't show up. That's not right.
Well, sorry, yeah. Because again, what I've been saying, the culture of expectations, and if nobody's talking to the parent, and this is what the expectation is for this school, and if it's not met, then there will be repercussions for your student of some sort.
So for this purpose, definitely I think what I'm hearing is in December and in June specifically, that the conversation around the attendance and tardies will be, what have our schools individually done to create this culture here and on time, pulling from my team today, here and on time culture at our campuses, and can we already see, number-wise, attendance tardies down, or at least have those.
Exactly, and I want to say it is a K-12 issue, because I thought it was more secondary until I met with an elementary principal, and was blown away. And then, but I met with a high school principal where it was such a significant culture shift, because it was such a bad issue that the teachers weren't taking attendance till third period. And we still have to correct that this year after we corrected it last year. We had to go back and correct it again this year, and we're still correcting that behavior, that teachers must take attendance every period. And we're still fighting that culture that says it's your legal duty to take attendance every period. And so it's huge, and I'm dumbfounded, quite honestly, by that, because it's a basic requirement under the statute. Teachers must take attendance, but the teachers were not taking attendance till third period. Well, hello? You have to take attendance every period, and if the child is missing, we have to inform the parent within a time frame so the parent knows their child didn't show up. Because if the parent thinks the kid went to school and they didn't, they're checking to find them. And that's a significant problem that we've had in Coronado High School that we are fixing. And we thought we had it fixed, and then we found out just a few weeks ago that we had to go back and have the conversation again. That said every period, every day, every teacher. And we're still, it's a culture shift. It's an amazing culture shift. I'm shocked that we're still doing it.
And the only, I wouldn't call it a caveat to put on this, but maybe a fine point in communication is that this isn't being done for a punitive reason. This isn't a hammer. It's back to the flashlight. It's to shine a light on the situation, to determine if we can improve the conditions for the learners. Because I could see where this could be taken the wrong direction, and someone is, we no longer tolerate this. No, that's not what we're saying. We're saying we never did tolerate, quite frankly, but now we're just trying to understand and get the partner. The parent is a partner in this. You see what I'm saying? It's subtle, but I could see it going.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying, and I just want to keep saying, it's in the basic duty of the teacher, dispatch, and the requirement. And unfortunately, it's not been the culture, so we've got to fix that. But once you got when you get the teacher doing that, now I have a meaningful conversation with the parent about creating success. Yeah. So it's everything that we're doing in here has teacher role critical.
I just whispered something in conclusion. My conclusion, everything on here will drive academics. Every line item, we are we're hitting from many angles, driving the academic performance in our district. And it is truly many angles, but it's a underlying culture, which I couldn't be more excited about this and come Patterson.
I agree. So when I saw the overall, it all put down on paper, and just to have it all these months and months of these conversations and our work with administration, have this all down on paper and see the alignment, be able to see it clearly, give me chance.
We challenged us last March, and we said, do you think you can put that down in writing?
No. Good. Okay.
So why don't you make a motion?
That's it. We can move on to that action item.
I will make a motion that we adopt the superintendent's performance goals as reviewed here this morning.
Reviewed and modified.
Reviewed and modified. So glad you're here. Thank you.
I'll second.
Board Member Kirby, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Board Member Travis?
I motion that we adjourn, I don't know what, it's 11:29.
Do I have a second? Thank you, Board Member Mendez, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion passes 5-0.